Zrcalo doesn't just stop at online abuse. He'll, bring it into your IRL stuff. He doxed my entire family and sent it to a lot of dangerous people who, don't really have much left in their life other than to kill somebody.
I'm suddenly being accused of being a predator and stuff like that. And then it gets to the point where it's like he was doing some weird mix between, well, you wouldn't survive in jail, and I can help protect you because Zrcalo and them are planning to do a lot against you.
Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is Sunny. First of all, I want to say thank you for clicking on this video and giving your time and energy towards listening and understanding the victim's perspective. Hearing the voices of confirmed victims really matters when it comes to empathizing with them and understanding why we strive for accountability. I'm releasing these interviews as a resource and point of information for those who need it. All of the interviews were done with consenting parties who approved this video before its release. These interviews were conducted as a part of my research into the internet predator known as Zrcalo. For those who might not know who that is, I have a summary up on my channel, accompanied with a flowchart to help keep track of their misdeeds. Following these interviews, a documentary-style video is currently being processed, which will be a deep dive into Zrcalo's many communities, which involved outing predators at the expense of children, and helping them get away. This is one part in a series of interviews. This video documents victims of Zrcalo, the first who is known by the community as Oliver, and the second known by the community as Dan. Again, thank you for watching. There will be timestamps in the description to differentiate between the two interviews. Thank you so much for coming on. I'd like to ask you first things first. What would you like me to refer to as, your pronouns and your preferred name?
You can just call me Dan or Andy. That's fine. And my pronouns are she, her.
All right. Awesome. Okay, so just jumping right into it. I want to ask, what was your relationship to Zrcalo and when did you meet him?
So, the first time I met him was 2021. I think it was around March. And I was still 17 by then. I'm not really sure if he knew that at first, but it was kind of known that the moderators were minors anyway, so he kind of assumed my age, that I was 17, which I think he was correct. I first met him when I did a call out on his friend, Blamir. You can pretty much find him anywhere. There's a lot of sources saying that, Blamir groomed this, I think a 16-year-old named Hector. And I remember Zrcalo coming into our comment section, begging us to take down the post. Obviously, I didn't know who he was at first, and I joked around with him, and I think we kind of mocked him for probably about 2 months. And then I realized that this dude was kind of becoming obsessive with my account and started posting about me every single day. And it wasn't just like a post every day like, oh, this account sucks or whatever. It was like he posted very like hourly stuff about our account. We wouldn't even be talking about him and he'd still be obsessing over our account.
Well, that's a little crazy.
Yeah. So I've never had a good relationship with Zrcalo. I know that I tried to warn a lot of people of him, but it became too late by the time he took over the quote-unquote anti-community.
Now, I wasn't here for this, but just a side question. So I wasn't here when he was really popular in the anti-community. Obviously, I only came during his downfall. So do you mind describing for me a little bit about what was his role in the anti-community, how popular he was, and how people generally saw him?
So when he first ran the anti-community, it was under my username Zrcalo. It had a good track record in general because, you know, all the moderators weren't pedophiles or groomers, and we had a good record of just outing bad people. And so he took that and didn't tell anyone that it was him for months until he got all his brownie points. And I guess that's when people started to find out that it was him. I guess he started safe spaces for minors with paraphilias, and I remember his account reaching 10,000 followers,
Oh, wow.
and I know that he gained a lot of clout from the Sappho situation. So he was pretty prominent in the community.
Okay, so it's not some small fry here. Yeah.
No.
And just to make sure, because sometimes I get a little confused when we talk about him taking over the Zoophile Shrug account. Does that mean that he, hacked it? Like, did he hack the account, somehow got in without anyone knowing about it?
Okay, so back in 2021, Zrcalo had my full docs. It's released now. It's been released over and over again by him and his friends. But at that time, I was terrified of, you know, Kitty of Quantum and like Sappho. And that was like right when Sappho first came prominent. And I remember him DMing the account. I don't have the DMs, but I do have DMs of him DMing someone else about it. He basically said that if we don't deactivate, he's going to release my docs on Kiwi Farms and spread hellfire. So it was kind of a blackmail, and obviously I just turned 18 by then, so I didn't know any better. And the first thing I did was just deactivate the account. He claims that one of my moderators handed over the account to him, but I am doubtful considering that my mods have always hated him.
I see.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds pretty rough. I'm
Yeah.
very sorry to hear that. That sounds terrifying.
Yeah. It's it's nothing new, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly, wow. Um, so the next question that I have for you is, have you noticed a pattern in the way that Zrcalo treats people, drawing from your personal experiences with him?
Of course. I've noticed that he loves to hang out with minors, and especially not just any minors, but minors who don't have good social support at their home or with their friends, minors that can't talk to their parents, or just minors that have paraphilias in general. And I found that those kids are usually easy to manipulate. It's kind of shown with his logs with them, and they're usually victims of Sappho or some other prominent pedophile in the community. He'll um he'll praise you and tell him that he's the person to come to and you can trust him. So once he gets their trust, they start venting to him about, you know, their paraphilias or their home life. And once that starts happening, he starts logging what you're saying, exporting your chats and all that to use as later blackmail if you ever decide to, you know, break out of the Zrcalo group. He's done it time and time again. He does it with Coyote Lovely and his old friend Mottenfest and even Oliver.
Yeah, wow. That's, again, absolutely terrifying and deplorable, honestly. Gosh, just dude. Um, well, thank you for that insight. Um, I wanted to ask also, like, what kind of slander has Zrcalo said about you? And would you like to debunk any of that? I know we have a ton of logs really debunking some of it, but I just wanted to know if there's something you wanted to raise attention to and denote, and maybe I could add that into the video when I post this.
So, Zrcalo, the first thing he'll say about you is that you're mentally ill, which is ableist as hell to say to someone, just like saying that they're not credible just because they're mentally ill. He's said that I have DID, which is not true. I've never been diagnosed, and I've been, with therapists all of my life. He's when I was 17, and that was around the time I met him. He called me a groomer, which there's no evidence of me grooming, obviously, or else he would shove it in my face. But he did it for the most part because one of my moderators got triggered by the word grooming. And so his way of getting back at us was just to keep throwing out the word groomer. He did call me a pedophile once, but it was always the word groomer. I have logs to always disprove it, and logs of him saying that he lied about it just out of spite. But
Wow.
that's the main thing. He said a lot of other stuff about me. He's schizophrenic, and so I think that he is borderline delusional about me. So he'll tell his friends that somehow I'll be flirting with him when I don't even talk to him, or I put a curse on them, and he genuinely believes it. It's really creepy.
I'm sorry to hear that. Oh my god. Yeah. Do you know if you could send me any of those logs whenever you have the chance? I know you're pretty busy. But whenever you have the chance, and I will be on the lookout for those because I know some of them have been released already.
Oh yeah, I can definitely send you over them. I have to export my logs with him, but it'll either be in the Google Doc, and there's a few new ones that he's sent to me.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Okay. So what type of... Wait, no, sorry. What is something you feel is much clearer in hindsight about the situation once you really look back on it?
I feel like when it first started, I genuinely believed that I was in the wrong, because your mind doesn't really change when you first turn 18. I was still in my child mindset, and so I believed almost everything he said. And I thought that I was, genuinely the worst person because people were supporting him and saying that I was this and that. But looking back on it, I realized that I'm definitely not alone. I've seen him do this to Oliver and many other kids and adults, usually around my age. And yeah, just knowing that I'm not the only one that has gone through this is obviously awful, but it makes me feel better to know.
Yeah. Wow. That's also pretty powerful too to really consider. It sucks that he's been, gosh, I don't even know. He's been doing this to so many people. It's that's the same thing I keep on hearing over and over again. Yes, I know they've done it to so many other people. It's like a really sad concept.
It's disgusting, and the people who are around him are, very much aware of what he does, but they do nothing about it. And I can't blame, obviously, the kids who stick by him and think that he's totally fine, because they're a victim too. But the adults that enable him to do this, they should feel shame, because he keeps doing this to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. So how has Zrcalo affected you? Well, I guess you kind of already kind of got into that a little bit, but is there anything you want to elaborate on about it?
Yeah, Zrcalo doesn't just stop at online abuse. He'll, bring it into your IRL stuff. He doxed my entire family and sent it to a lot of dangerous people who, don't really have much left in their life other than to kill somebody.
Wow.
He's sent a lot of. He said that he didn't do it, but he was much aware of it. He sent a lot of paraphile sex stuff to my house. Like, I know he sent diapers and a dog collar, and then he sent a Zeta symbol, which is a zoophile symbol, and then a lot of Kiwi Farm propaganda. I can't remember the rest, but there was like 10 things. And he sent police to my house too.
Oh my
So
gosh.
he's not just some dude that likes to do a little trolling online, because this has really affected me, and I'm in therapy for this
Of
right now.
course.
I've been going to therapy for weeks. I'd just say that he put a lot of mental strain on my family and
Yeah.
on me.
Um, are you in a safer position right now, or is he still endangering you and your family currently?
Well, he sent police to my house around last month, so
Wow.
you know, it's still going on.
And has this prompted you to have to talk to your family about this? I mean, I can imagine that's a very rough conversation to have. Pretty confusing.
Oh yeah. At this point, my mom has already been aware. She was aware around the time I turned 18, which was last year because I'm 19 now. But she's been aware, and it's just been a lot of a lot of stress for
Of
her,
course.
and for my dad and everything.
Yeah, I completely understand that. That's absolutely terrifying. Everything that you've had to say about this is absolutely terrifying. Wow. Um, so is there something you would like to say to somebody who might be dealing with a person like Zrcalo, like currently, or has had to deal with somebody like that in the past? Is there something that you've learned from this? Um, I don't know, it's a weird phrase. But yeah, do you have any advice for people who are going through this?
Be loud and talk about it with everyone you can. Just be loud and have your voice out there, because I went from being a quote unquote abuser in everybody's eyes to a victim. And it's just very empowering. So just keep talking about it until people listen, because your story is just important to you.
Of course. That's pretty powerful. Gosh, that's great advice too. Yeah. Um, make sure to let people know what's happening so, people can help you or stay clear from this person.
Yeah.
Well, unless you have anything to add, which, literally you could go on forever, I will not stop you. If there's anything you have to add, you could go ahead and add it. Otherwise, we could also wrap this up.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what else I would have to add, because I've been on multiple streams and talked about this a lot, but I do appreciate you having me on here.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate you giving me the time of day and letting me interview you and giving me these really honest answers. Even though I'm sure I'm sure this situation is so hard to talk about sometimes. It's hard to be involved in. So I appreciate that so much from you. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're definitely doing good, man. I hope you recover from this and um, are able to move on at some point.
Yeah, thank you so much. That means so much to me.
Yeah, it's it's just scary that people like this exist, and I'm really just kind of proud of like you also and the community for supporting you. I really just hope that everything turns out great for you, man.
Yeah, and in my eyes, I think everything has turned out perfectly, because he's on everybody's radar at this
Right?
point.
Yes, exactly. He's definitely getting what he deserves. Do get back out of it right now. Like his lies his lies are intense, but it's really pathetic because almost every single lie that he tells you can absolutely put a evidence to it and just completely dismiss it.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and part of that, part of us being able to do that is from your receipts and your just confronting this and putting it out there, like your guys' initial document has helped push this out so much, and this predator is being exposed and discredited. It's really probably going to be hard for him to continue to thrive on a platform as he is right now. And yeah, it's definitely thanks to you. So all right. So I sent you some of the interview questions, but I'm going to just go over them as though you haven't seen them. And you can take as long as you want to answer them. And yeah, like I said, all of the stuff I said earlier. All right. So first, I would ask you to introduce yourself. Like, who are you, and what's your kind of relevancy to this situation?
Okay. You want me to do that now or?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I'm Oliver. I went by like Olive Juice and stuff like that. Um, I was one of Zrcalo's exes, his most recent one.
Okay. The most recent one.
Yeah.
So, do you mind if I ask you, um, how long your relationship with? How do you say his name? Oh my gosh.
Zrcalo.
Zrcalo. Okay. How was your relationship like with him, and how long did it last?
It lasted about a year, I think,
Okay.
and it. I thought it was good when I was in it, but it was like in hindsight, a lot of shit was happening. That I just did not notice.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask, like, what kind of stuff was going down, and you kind of had no clue until later?
Like he'd do things like gaslight me, like,
Okay.
but he'd do it in a way where it was like gaslighting by being dismissive of my concerns and stuff. Um, or he'd outright be like, cause I have a thing where if I get overwhelmed, um, I will clear or delete chats just because I'm like overwhelmed and nervous. Um, Usually when I'm trying to block people and not talk to them anymore, which I do to him. I tried to like break up with him like 3 different times basically. um and because when I want to cut people off, I clear and block the chat and all that stuff or whatever, just to delete it and get it out of my sight so I won't like obsessively look at it. Um I like finally addressed him about something after like we had 2 mutual friends, and like they didn't know what they were doing, but like they would basically come to me afterwards and like convince me to talk to him again. So I'd unblock him and we talk, but like one of the times I brought up one of my issues, he was just like, "Well, where's the logs of that happening? Like can you prove it happening? Because if you can't, then it's just gaslighting and like stuff like that."
Okay, so they definitely changed the course of events when you go back to criticize them or talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Definitely sounds like typical gaslighting to me, yeah. Um, and so you thought the relationship was kind of healthy while you were in it, but it
I
just.
had like recently, like I think like gotten out of like 2 years before I met him. I'm pretty sure 2 years, 1 year. I got out of like a really like bad
Uh-huh.
engagement. So like it was one of those circumstances where I wasn't aware, but it was very much like he was meeting the bare minimum, and I was like, oh, that's really good actually. So I didn't see everything else.
Yeah, it's understandable. I've been there too, yeah. Uh, so you didn't really see it because you definitely are not used to being
Yeah.
treated well. Yeah, very sorry to hear that. The second question would be, have you noticed a pattern in the way that Zrcalo treats his relationship partners in comparison to you? Because I did notice that you brought up there was a pattern of him spreading lies about people, and you're definitely not the only one.
Yeah. That's not only the people he dates. Like, I talked to one of the other people who he used to, like, flirt with, and, like, somebody else he used to date reached out to
Mhm.
me, but they're staying anonymous, so I can't, like, exactly say what he did to them because then he'll, like,
Of
link
course.
them. But, even just, like, observing with, like, Elite, because 'cause I'm aware that he'll switch his tactics with everybody he's with too, because, like, I've talked to his old partners and people who he flirted with, and while there were similarities, it was also, like, he did purposefully change how fast he told people certain information, which is why he can link who said what. Like, I guess to see what's most effective, which makes him more scary in the case of, like, being
Yeah.
manipulative. Like, he'll see his mistakes with his past ones and, like, switch his tactics. Um, but even just observing Elite, like, I was pretty much, like, in the same situation where he was telling me that all of these people who was warning me about him were, like, bad people, like the actual Nazis or the pedophiles or Zusadas who were just trying to paint him as a bad person and take that stuff away from him. So I didn't, like, trust what they were saying when they warned me about him. I was also in a situation where I saw him as, like, a type of savior type, because he was like, oh well, if I didn't find you, you would have gotten swept in by Zusadas rings and manipulated by them and stuff like that.
Yes.
Um, which he did to Elite too, by, quote, rescuing, end quote, him from Sappho. Um, and then like that whole thing where they didn't start dating until he was in call with Elite, when he got swatted or whatever, taking advantage of him in a vulnerable moment. I also asked him out, like, days after he was in call with me, because I had, like, a game end
Wow.
breakdown related to
Dang.
stuff. It's the pattern that I'm watching happen to Elite too, but they don't really listen until it's, like, too late
Yeah.
and stuff happens.
So speaking of which, I know that the common narrative, where everybody pretty much sees this as Elite being groomed by Zrcalo. Would you say that you were groomed? And I guess a follow-up question was, was what age were you guys when you were dating, if you know that?
I'm pretty sure we were being groomed, and, like, I was, like, 20, I
Okay.
think, and he was still, like,
Yeah.
33. So I know that's not always, like, a grooming age
Mhm.
gap, but I'm, like, pretty certain that, like, the lack of experience and, like, knowledge about all of this stuff that, like, we were involved in, and just, like, the general lack of life experience and, like, lacking the same level of maturity and stuff is, like, something he did take advantage of.
Okay, yeah, I could totally see that. The question is, what type of slander have they said about you? And is there anything that you'd like to debunk? I know you debunked a lot of stuff in one of your first documents. Was there anything that you're especially, like, extremely upset about, and is a lie? And something that I could probably add in, like, receipts when I use this call in, like, my video?
Oh yeah, let me get out the slander book.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely, because I know that can be very frustrating, even if you have the evidence that it's all slander, and nobody's, like, seeing it, nobody cares about it. So I wanted to give you the opportunity
yeah.
to.
I know, like, hanging out in Kaz's server, a lot of stuff got debunked by people who were actually paying attention to the situation, because, like, we'd always be in the channels, and, like, I'll of course, like, explain things and, like, try to find, like, what when it happened and what happened. But I'm pretty sure he said, like, at least, like, 3 to 4, maybe even 5 things. Like, one of the things was him saying I was, like, a pedophile. Because, like, some 16-year-old lied about their age to me. A 16-year-old who he was also flirting with, because we thought he was 18. And he, and, like, they tried to say, oh, I didn't ask his age, but, like, he said he was 18 before I ever, like, became close friends with him, because I don't typically become close friends with, minors. And he was in Zrcalo's 18 plus chat as a moderator and stuff like that. He was in the Sappho group chat. Zrcalo and Naya both said they did like background checks on us all. So I was like, all right, well, if they know he's lying about his age, they'd say it, you know.
So that's definitely concerning. I actually just recently looked at those receipts where this person confessed to you that they were very sorry that they lied, and your response to that.
Yeah, that was how it got.
Yeah,
debunked.
that was how it got debunked.
Yeah, they also like tried to say I thought he was 16 but never like clarified or whatever, and I was just like, no. That conversation where I said, oh, maybe he could be 16, it's like 50-50. It's like after we had a conversation debating whether or not he could be 16, because Zrcalo randomly came up to me like, oh, hey, he might be 16, by the way. And I was like, oh, what? Okay. And then we had a whole discussion about it, but he only shows like bits of the discussion forwarded from the discussion instead of the whole thing, which I've invited him to share, and he won't.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's pretty ironic that Zrcalo complains about people doing the same thing. Oh, you won't share the whole thing, or their receipts are out of context.
Yeah, and I've showed full context. Like, people will ask me for more context, and if it's not in the text, I'll say it. And if it is, I'll just show, like, proof that the rest isn't related, and that's why it was cropped out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And he also tried to say, like, I was, like, him and his group will try to say, I was sexual with a kid after knowing they were 16, even though I cut him off, and that was the whole controversy and why the kid is mad at me. Like, I'm pretty sure that's why they were saying I was a pedophile and like sexually abusing them and stuff, because they were mad I cut them off. And like they say I belittled him, but that was a conversation where he was like obsessing over me after I blocked him for being 16. And Zrcalo went to me and he was like, hey, just like give him closure. You need to talk to him. And he shows me a forwarded message from his like vent channel, like where he's like begging me to talk to him like into the ear or whatever. Like just being obsessive, like, oh, please answer. Please let me talk to you. Like, answer, stuff like that. And he's like, just tell him to like end himself or something, just, And I was like, well, I'm not doing that, but I'll have a discussion with him. And like I was trying to be more firm about like why I had to cut him off, because he was like accusing me of cutting him off because he was a liability. And I was like, even if you don't care about yourself and like how traumatized you are because like of everything you saw while lying about your age, like you could have like got me in trouble if we escalated and shit like that. And they tried to say that was me like belittling him and stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely not belittling if that really happened, right? Especially if a 16-year-old came up to you and you thought that you were dating an 18-year-old. That's not okay. On their part, it's pretty selfish of them to do, but it sounds like you took initiative as an adult to you took that initiative and cut off that relationship, which is exactly what it's exactly what your responsibility is as an adult when a minor, comes up to you like this. And it's the same argument that a lot of people have against Zrcalo when Elite came up to them, even if Elite was the first one initiating it,
Yeah, like if he like didn't say an age at all, or if he never like if he never outright said he was an adult, I would not have like treated him like an adult. Like even with people who like don't say their age, if they're ageless, I assume they're minors usually. It's not like I just assumed he was an adult because he didn't say an age. Like he outright said he was like 18.
Okay, yeah. No. And it does look like that's pretty supported by the evidences that you posted of those logs. So that's pretty well documented, and I hope that that one at least can be debunked.
Yeah, most people seem to understand that like it wasn't like my thing, and like I do go out of my way to avoid like servers that aren't usually like 18 plus.
Yeah, of course. So the next question is, what's something that you feel is much clearer in hindsight about the situation once you looked back on it? I think I already asked this before, but I guess I'll ask it. I guess I'll ask it again in case you have anything to add.
Also, just like I guess the way he like kept pushing like pro bestiality stuff on me, I didn't really notice at the time because I just thought we were like debating and arguing. But like thinking back on it, it was very much pushing and not just him trying to debate with me about it. And it was more stressful than I thought it was in the moment.
Yeah. That's definitely concerning. Absolutely.
Yeah, like there's other things he says about me, like slander wise too, that
Yeah. Do you want to talk about any of that?
Yeah, there's like the zoo sadism stuff where he says I like to harm cats, which is completely off par. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy because he didn't get me sucked into, like, talking about one of your other questions. He didn't get me sucked into zoo sadism stuff. He even knew I wasn't one before I knew I wasn't one, which is why it's wild that he's calling me one now. Because like even when I thought I was one, I would continuously say things like, well, my zoosadism clashes with my personality because even if we had to hunt animals, I don't think I'd be able to do it because I'd feel bad. Like I'd say stuff like that consistently. And I'd be like, oh well, the idea of necrozoo makes me gag. Like that's gross. Why would you do that? And just, you know, generally stuff like that. And then I found out I wasn't one. And I was like, oh well, like we talking about it more, and I was like, well, maybe I just have like homicidal ideations because I didn't have like education on what urges versus intrusive thoughts were. So I thought intrusive thoughts were urges. And I would vent to him about this. Where, you know, I'd vented to him about, you know, the screenshots he uses about my cat to say I wanted to harm them, even though the screenshots show I was like distressed by the thoughts and wanted nothing to do with them and was like obviously like I need help. And he tries to say he like broke up with me because of that, but that was never like why we broke up. Like he tried to normalize like homicidal stuff for me.
Oh my. That's yeah, that's also pretty well documented in your log. There's kind of an extra question that is kind of brought up for me is like, when did you decide that you really like needed to let the internet know what kind of a monster that Zrcalo is?
It was around when him calling me Lepedo got around to my real life because I met my other boyfriend through that group chat too. He was like around my age. We eventually we just started like living together. Which was a bad idea because it was very much a rushed idea. But like we met each other there too, and we were dealing with our own stuff, but things got sour between us, so he turned to Zrcalo for like, I guess like help or whatever. On like how to see me as a person, and then Zrcalo just outright lied and said I like abused him and like was like just a predator outright. And my other partner also has ex-partner now had DID as well. And this was around the time where her relationship was souring to the point where my actual boyfriend just disappeared from front. So the other guy that came and just did not know what was going on and didn't remember watching everything happen as it happened. So his first introduction to me is whatever Zrcalo told him.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I am at work and he's like, I don't know if I feel safe around you, texting me. And I'm like, honey, I'm trying to work, what's going on? And it turned into like a whole thing. I like went home that day because if I get too anxious, I just can't work. And I was anxious. And I had to like stay outside for a while because if he was like, oh, if you come home, I might hurt you, so you shouldn't come home right now. So I'm just like, so it was like around 3 a.m. and I had to call one of my friends and pace around outside. Like, I gotta pee, but I can't go in the house to pee. So I'm kind of just stuck out here for hours waiting for him to calm down. And I finally go home and by this point, like he said he didn't want to like talk in text. So I go to see him and then he doesn't want to talk in person either. And I'm like trying to figure out what's going on. and I have to like pry at him until he talks to me, and then it's just like I'm suddenly being accused of being a predator and stuff like that, and then it gets to the point where it's like he was doing some weird mix between, well, you wouldn't survive in jail, and I can help protect you
What?
because Zrcalo and them are planning to do a lot against
Wow.
you, um, and like if you just like listen to me, I can help you. And you know, I was terrified at this point. Like I don't blame him for a lot of the things he did while this was all going down because we were both very unwell mentally.
Yes.
Um and like I was like very toxic back to him because we were just in a high stress environment because of this. Like because this happened, it like caused a lot of like rift and tension and fights between us. Um because it was just like completely broke the trust between us, and like it got to a point where he was like telling me to leave. We he couldn't force me out because we were both on the lease, but like he even like gave me medicine with my consent for like anxiety, and I passed out because of it, and then like I wake up and he like had took my phone.
Oh my goodness.
And like made me like, yeah, he made me like give him my password so he could like look through it because he was like, well, predators don't have like privacy. He'd say stuff like that, and like I wasn't exaggerating when I say they traumatized me
Of
through this.
course.
Like, he went through my phone to make sure like I didn't have like CSEM and like minors in my phone, obviously. And then when he didn't find them, he told me he told them that, and they cyber tipped me anyway, just to harass me more because this was around the time I think. Um, they didn't cyber tip me then. They cyber tipped me when I was coming out about it. But like this was all like I was dealing with all of this like being like I didn't know the laws at the
Yeah.
time, so I thought I could end up in jail and that this was being held over my head. Like we'd argue and he'd snap and be like, well, I'm just going to tell, like we worked at the same place, he was like, I'm just going to tell them like what you did, like being a pedo and stuff like that. And it was just like intensely stressful for me, and I was just like, I don't know what to do because I don't know the laws. I don't know like if him lying, because I never received like images from him or anything either. Like I just wasn't sure if everything that happened between us was legal or not because he lied about his age, and I had to like look into the laws until I could finally like feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
But all of that happened, and then we kept fighting and stuff like that, and eventually got to a point where I was just like, I'm so distressed and I need to go to anyone. Like I even reached out to Zrcalo asking why he was lying about me and stuff, but he was pretending to be scared of me and like I abused him, so he refused to talk to me. And everybody else ignored me too. So eventually, I was like going through my logs with him because I managed to find them and was trying to clear my memory some more. Um, and then in the middle of that, I was just like, I remember Dan.
Yeah.
um, because he demonized Dan to everybody, he would like make us think Dan was like some evil, like abusive person who'd like harass and dox us and stuff like that. And I was like, but she's the only person I know who knows her hollow. And I need help. I need closure. I need something. So I reached out to her. I didn't know that she was like in the middle of dealing with Zrcalo again. That was a
Yeah.
coincidence. Um, I reached out to her and we talk a bit, and I'm like showing her the logs and stuff. We're going through it together. Like she was like heard out my side of the story and everything, and like Dan has seen the full logs, so like because I made sure to give them to her so she could see whether or not I was a bad person because I didn't want to be biased with saying everything that happened. And through talking to her and like several other people, like I was like, there's more victims. He lied about more
Wow.
people, and it was kind of like it was a mix between clearing my name and feeling like it was necessary to make sure there weren't even more in the future that he could lie about because he gets away with lying about people because of his
Right.
credibility, and he doesn't deserve that credibility. So I was like, well, then I'll just show the type of person he is, like behind the scenes that he
Yeah.
hides.
That's very admirable of you. Considering how much Zrcalo has put you through, and you still went out of your way to make sure to, expose them, make sure there weren't any more victims. That's pretty brave of you because looking at all of this other stuff, because you and Dan and someone else. You guys were really the catalyst, right, for all of this.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel that people are really like picking it up and like caring about this and digging in deeper and trying to expose more about Zrcalo? Does it trigger you? Does it make you feel hopeful? Is it scary or difficult to see these things?
I feel relieved that my internet presence and stuff I do online isn't something I have to like hide and make sure can't be connected back to
Mm-hmm.
me. Um, because when we first like made the document and released it, we didn't have anybody looking at it because he wasn't running like the transphobic L's account or like the transphobic L's account wasn't properly exposed at that
Yeah.
point. So nobody really cared. And they were aware of this, and we kind of just like got like harassed back into silence and like locked our Twitter accounts and I deleted mine at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the one GPS made a thread on, the homesick cameraman
Okay.
one. Because that was because when they were aware we were gathering the documents was when they started attacking us again. Like like Zrcalo was in Dan's DMs, not knowing we were talking to each other like quite yet, like personally. They just knew we were sharing information. Um he was in Dan's DMs like, oh my god, no, Oliver is psychotic. He got kicked out and he runs around on all fours and he'll probably end up in jail and he's like a pedo
Oh
sadist
my.
and then he was in my DMs like Dan's going to turn against you. I've told you how bad she is.
He's trying to play
And
both sides and completely failed.
yeah, like we were talking to each
Yeah.
other. So but he says I blackmailed him, but he came in my DMs panicking like on Telegram like why are you doing this? And I was just like please don't act dumb. You know what happened.
And none of this.
And he was like asking me what I wanted. And I was like, well, I want you to stop lying about me, but I'm not going to stop, like I already handed over the logs. There's nothing I can do about that now. um and he didn't even really deny lying about me. He was just like, how did my words affect you?
Really?
Like, he was like, well, if you need to defend yourself, you do it privately with your logs. You don't go exposing everything. And he was like trying to convince me that I was putting myself in danger and that Kiwi Farms was going to target me and stuff like that. And like when I went back down still, then GPS made like a thread saying I sent news to multiple minors, and I would not know who these minors were because I don't talk to kids. And like just like outright like lying, and then she cyber tipped me.
Wow. So Zrcalo just completely went after you for kind of no reason other than he was bitter. I guess you guys were exes at that point. And he just
Yeah,
wanted
like
to make your life miserable, thinking that he had all this power to do so.
yeah, I broke up like with him like 4 or 5 times
Yeah.
maybe. Like he says he was uncomfortable and he was the one who broke up with me last. But like him saying I just want to break up, to be honest, with during me breaking up with him. um because I was angry and fed up after all of that time. But like I broke up with him like maybe 3 times, and my friends like would convince me to talk to him again. Like the friends who were mutual friends with him because I was isolated from my normal friends at the moment. Um and then like the third or fourth time I broke up with him was me just outright being like, I don't think we should talk anymore. It was like one of the times where like the first times I did it, I just like panicked, blocked him, tried not to talk to him. But that time I did it, I was just outright like, I don't think we should talk anymore, like directly. And he tried to like sidestep it by like saying like anyway, I'm thinking of starting a cult, and I was just like, I'm serious. And he was just like, okay. And then like days later, I hear that he's telling people that I secretly knew the kid's age, like starting to spread that around. So I unblock him, and I'm like, hey yo, why are you saying that about me? You know it's not true. And then he like kind of tried to like downplay it and stuff like that, and make it seem like my reaction to the information wasn't intense enough through text for him to believe I didn't know. Um and like I don't remember fully what happened. I just remember I ended up like breaking down and apologizing and saying I didn't want to actually break up with him and stuff, and we ended up dating again. Um and then the final time was that time where he like shows people with him saying I just think we should break up, to be honest, because I was just it was the conversation where he admitted everything was for clout and he didn't really care about victims or anything, which is why he won't show the rest of that conversation either. um
Wow. This is just a roller
yeah.
coaster. I don't even remember. Is this all new information? Or I don't even remember seeing anything about this. Like,
I think some of it might be new, some of it might have been like briefly brought up in Kaz's stream, but it wasn't really the focus of
right.
it. So
Of course, yeah. The point of this is essentially just to give the victims of Zrcalo a voice. My platform isn't the biggest, but I just, yeah. So whatever you feel like you have to say about the situation is completely on the table. I don't want this to be like overly focused on just getting to the point.
concerning other things about like Zrcalo, it's just like he also had me interacting with like the pedo community eventually at like one point. Like and I'm aware that this is like part of his like thing. He gets you desensitized to pro contact zoos, and then he gets you like talking to like pedo community
Yeah.
and stuff like that. It's like this weird this weird thing where he desensitizes you and then makes you think you're one of them. Um it was weird. Like I broke out of talking to them like before he ever did anything about it, because the other ex I like moved in with was the one who saw that they were like kind of like convincing me that I consented as a kid to my relationships with adults, and he was like, I see what's going on, they've done it to me.
Yeah.
You should get out of here. um that ex is also the one who got me away from Zrcalo, because he was like, you literally refuse to acknowledge that he saves zoo sadism. And I was just like, it's because I was like using his excuses like for it too, and he was like, "Do you really think that? Really?" He was just like questioning me, and yeah, it was like a lot of denial. But like these are also the types of people where they will like bring harm against you. Like they try to play like this moral grounding thing, but like while my ex was talking to them, and like he was like, this was around when that relationship was really at a peak, and we were like doing some things like I'd get aggressive, like basically like he would tell me to off myself and stuff like that, and I'd like eventually get to a point where I was returning his energy because I was fed up, and I wouldn't tell him the exact same things he'd tell me. But I was aggressive back after a while. um and it was just bad. Like there was a time where he did hit me because of a misunderstanding, and it was a situation where like he threatened to off both of us, and while we were driving in his car and stuff like that. And I ended up calling like the domestic violence shelter like several times. um Again, I don't really blame him. We were both in a really bad headset. Like I didn't physically do things to him, but I was still like verbally aggressive and stuff.
Yeah.
And again, this was because of like the entire like predator thing happening. Like Zrcalo just tainted our relationship completely with that, and we could not trust each other anymore. And it was like it poisoned us. And it was just like they knew these things. He would vent to them and try to like get them to see what I was doing wrong, but also make sure they saw what he was doing, because he was going for legit help. Like he did want to like help our relationship get better. While we were living together, I was already planning to move out. And it was just like they knew he was doing this. And then I would make vague vent posts about him on my Twitter that he wasn't looking at, and I would never like tag him or anything in it. It was just like vague vent posts. And they'd outright just go out of their way to send it to him and say I was like talking about him and
Right, so
like
if they thought that you were talking
threatening
about
me.
him and sent it to him. That's not like if they
Yeah.
thought that you were venting about him, like doing all of these things to you, and they completely correlated it with Zrcalo and just sent it to him.
No, they sent it to my ex that I was living with. That they knew was doing like they had full context of everything that was going on in our household, and they would still go out of their way to send it to my ex, and then it would provoke and incite more fights and stuff between us, and
God.
just like they would enable and provoke like abusive behaviors like in a bad living environment on purpose, basically. Yeah, like they were just so intent on painting me as a bad person that they didn't really care.
Wow. Very sorry to hear that, man. I know it's a pretty difficult situation that this whole mess has led to. And I really admire the fact that you still, decided to do something about it. And you're still engaging with people wanting to figure out, like, the depths of this person. I know it can't be really that easy on you considering all of the stuff that you've been put through. So I really appreciate you interviewing for this. I really do appreciate that and continuing to help everybody like contextualize everything. I just want to say that I really admire you for that. If you wanted to summarize it, how would you say that Zrcalo has affected you?
Let's see. I wouldn't say he affected me in a long-term way, in a way where it's like I'm going to forever be affected by this and never be able to get better or anything. But it was in a sense where it was like I do have a bit of trauma and stuff from all of this. Like I do like
Absolutely.
feel a little bit like paranoid around people.
Yeah. It's understandable. Like from what I have heard, I probably would be in the same position. Yeah. So, yeah. I'm also very sorry to hear about that.
No.
So, is there something you'd like to say to someone who's dealing with someone who's like Zrcalo or any of his current or past victims?
I'd say if you're dealing with somebody like Zrcalo, it's easier said than done. But it's best to get out as soon as possible, just because like that type of person will still try to drag you while you're escaping and not associating with them at all.
It's a good advice. Good advice. I hope that I hope you have better friends, honestly. Like to this day, I hope that you've met better people that you can really trust to, see you through these types of situations.
Yeah, I went back to my friends who I've known for years because throughout this all I was like a bit isolated from them, not like artificially. It was just like one of those situations where we've known each other for years and we weren't actively talking casually. So I was like lonely. So you can imagine their surprise when I went back to them and I was like, guys, I dated this guy and now I'm in another state, but also I'm being painted as a pedophile and
And they're like, what did you get yourself into?
yeah, this time I'm always up to some weird stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I hope did they help out like recovery for this situation?
Yeah, they gave me advice while I was dealing with the ex I was living with. They were like they sat down and like talked to me throughout the entire like with my other ex they did make sure to tell me where I was in the wrong. So they weren't just like babying me through that one. But like with Zrcalo, they were like, yeah, fuck that guy. Like I like told them the whole story, and they were basically also just like, how do you get in these types of relationships? Because I have a bad taste, but he's kind of the worst one I've run into. Where even my ex fiance was like, I'm not that bad. Why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah.
I do have something one of my friends wanted to say because they're 17, almost
Okay.
18. but like they're also a victim of Zrcalo in a way, and I think they said if I ever get put in something again, they want me to finally say their story because they didn't want to be like they didn't want to be named before, but I had to pull up what
Oh,
they
of
said.
course. Yeah, absolutely. You can put a whole section in there just for this person.
Okay, yeah. This person was named like Fruit at the time. I think they were 16, 17. They were in these pro recovery at the time they were in these pro recovery chats and stuff like that. Um and they said they've heard about how Struggs wants to heal the community and get kids out of things in his interview with Kaz. Um but they quickly realized once they left the community that the recovery community was very open to minors as just a way to keep them like trapped in the paraphilia community. Like his drugs kept bringing in minors, his circle kept bringing in minors. They were brought into the recovery community as a way to link them straight back into the paraphilia community. They said they've seen so many minors go from the recovery community back into the paraphilia community, and that's just like all a giant trap for minors. It said Struggs even came to them and another person in VC talking about faunaphilia, which is um people who like seeing animals have sex with each other. And like he'd go around like telling these people who thought they were into that because that mean they were technically attracted to animals in a way that meant they were zoophiles. Like he was very intent. Like I've had not only Fruit but other people come to me in DMs like saying, Zrcalo made me think I was a zoophile, or Zrcalo made me think I didn't need help for my paraphilia because it wasn't that bad in his eyes and stuff like that. Like he's not, he's lying outright when he says he wants these people to recover.
My goodness. Was that what the miner had to say?
Yeah, like and I think there was like one more thing where Zrcalo and like in RZAF, one of the servers that was open before, like an MVC. I wasn't there at the time, but they just told me about this like a few days ago, I think. He was trying to say that you're supposed to act like your bird's mate, like saying you could have a romantic relationship with a bird. Like he was trying to justify like that.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, we do see the same pattern with hypnotisafo victims, which is ironically something that Zrcalo has tried to accommodate. Oh my gosh. Just goes everywhere.
Yeah, I've seen the way he's bringing in Sappho's victims into his groups, and it's disgusting. Honestly,
brings in Sappho's victims from the groups, but Sappho has also reportedly done this thing where they've convinced minors that they were into this stuff. So, honestly, it feels so much more disturbing to me. I don't even know what to say. That's pretty disgusting to hear. But I'm also very proud of this person for talking about it. And thanks so much for protecting their identity and giving them a voice also. That's pretty important for a lot of these people.
Yeah. They told me which name to call them by because they're not using that anymore anyway. But like I kind of like kept telling them not to outright say who they were publicly because I didn't want them targeted by Zrcalo because they kept being like, please just let me say something. I want to say something about this shaggy man, and I had to hold them back from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrendous because like he says he's going to therapy, but he's also told me outright how he just like he does not actually indulge his therapist in any like serious like honest conversation. So it's not like going to therapy is doing much when you're not utilizing it.
I want to say I'm pretty proud of you for dealing with this in the most mature way that you possibly could, and being very transparent about some of the slanders, your relationship with them and how it's affected you. I'm sure this is going to be very helpful to like any future victims of Zrcalo. It's probably going to be extremely helpful to any people just dealing with people like this, especially when you get to see somebody who has been through the same thing, naming and shaming those behaviors that they have done to you. Sometimes helps people wake up, you know, they're like, wow, this person's a douchebag. Wait, they do the same thing to me. Maybe I should think about this, you know?
Yeah, I've had a few people that like don't outright talk about him, just like come to me like, "Hey, I've like noticed the behavioral patterns you like said in like Kaz's stream or something." And it's like it's nice to see other people finally like it's sad to see them hurt, like because they obviously are, but it's nice to see them realizing that they were hurt, you know, at the same
Yeah.
time.